The video starts with a scream. Not dramatic, not theatrical. A real scream. The kind that comes from a throat being torn apart by absolute terror. Then static. Then the timestamp. March 15th, 2009, 11:47 p.m. Then nothing for 17 seconds. Then a voice, calm and clinical, speaking directly to the camera. My name is Dr. James Hartwell. If you're watching this, then Protocol 7 has failed. If you're watching this, you need to understand what happened here. You need to understand what we created. And you need to understand that it's still here. The screen goes black. That's the video I found 6 weeks ago in a sealed box at an estate auction. I bought it because the label was handwritten with the single word, destroy, which obviously meant I needed to watch it immediately. I'm a journalist. Curiosity is both my greatest asset and my greatest weakness.
My editor says the same thing Margaret, yes, another Margaret, though I'll explain that in a moment, said to me when I told her where I was going. My name is Michael Torres, and I'm about to tell you a story that I wish I'd never found. The video contained 17 hours of security footage from inside Riverside State Mental Hospital's research wing. A wing that wasn't on any official floor plan. A wing that, according to every government document and historical record, never existed. And yet there it was, a complete medical facility underground, with operating rooms and isolation chambers, and something that I can only describe as a sensory deprivation tank that was easily the size of a small house. I hired an independent historian to help me trace what happened here. Her name was Margaret Wu. She was brilliant, methodical, and completely rational about everything, until she wasn't. She's the reason I'm writing this now instead of just publishing the story like a normal person would do. The research wing was activated in 2003. The official hospital records show a new grant approved from a private foundation called the Helix Institute. The Helix Institute doesn't exist anymore, but I found references to it in academic papers. It was funding research into something called consciousness integration therapy. The lead researcher was Dr. James Hartwell, and he'd been given essentially unlimited resources and complete autonomy. What they were studying was simple in concept and horrifying in practice. What if mental illness wasn't a breakdown in individual consciousness, but rather a failure of consciousness to properly integrate with a larger collective awareness? The theory went like this. Humans are born with the capacity to access a kind of universal consciousness. But trauma, genetics, and psychological damage create barriers. Weren't sick. People with severe mental illness weren't sick. They were fragmented, separated from the collective. And if you could break down the barriers, reintegrate them with that larger awareness, you could cure them completely. Hartwell believed he'd found a method. It required isolation, sensory deprivation, pharmaceutical intervention, and something he called resonance therapy. I watched the footage of the equipment they built for this. It looked like something from a science fiction nightmare. Chairs that would immobilize a person, IV drips that would deliver combinations of drugs we'd never seen before. And around it all, walls covered in speaker systems that would produce sounds at frequencies that Hartwell theorized would alter brainwave patterns. The first 6 patients seemed to respond well to treatment. Margaret found their intake files. They all had diagnoses of severe schizophrenia or dissociative identity disorder, people who already existed partially outside consensus reality. Hartwell's notes described their initial treatment as promising. By week 3, the patients reported feeling more coherent, more integrated. The fragmented voices in their heads were becoming unified. The competing identities were merging. Then something changed. On day 23 of treatment, all 6 patients simultaneously began refusing to leave their isolation chambers.
The medical staff documented attempts to remove them physically, but the patients would become violently agitated. Not in protest, in genuine distress. They claimed that outside the chamber, their thoughts became scattered again. Fragmented. But inside, in the resonance field, they could feel themselves becoming complete. Hartwell ordered the staff to leave them alone. He theorized that they needed an extended immersion to achieve full integration. The staff was instructed to maintain the IV drips and monitor vitals remotely. For 72 hours, no one entered the resonance chamber. Then Hartwell ordered the next phase. 7 new patients were brought in. According to the records Margaret found, these weren't volunteers. These were patients from the general hospital population who had no families, no visitors, no one who would notice they'd disappeared from the regular wards into the research facility. 7 people with no one in the world to ask where they'd gone. The video shows them being prepped. It shows them being placed in the chairs. It shows the resonance field activating, a sound that's almost unbearable to listen to even through speakers. A frequency that seems to exist in your bones rather than your ears. And then it shows something that I've spent 6 weeks trying to understand. The 7 new patients and the 6 existing patients in the main chamber all began to speak at the same time. Not in unison. That would be normal, or at least normal for group psychosis. But they spoke in response to each other, completing each other's sentences, their individual voices creating something that sounded almost like a chord. A harmony. A unified consciousness learning to speak through multiple mouths simultaneously. Hartwell, watching from the control room, began to weep. According to his notes written that same day, "We've done it. We've actually done it. They're not 13 individuals anymore. They're one consciousness, experiencing itself through 13 perspectives. The barriers have dissolved. They've achieved perfect integration." Margaret called me after she'd reviewed this footage. Her voice was different, quieter. She said she needed to meet me in person. She said we needed to talk about what the integration meant. We met at a coffee shop in Portland. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. She ordered water and just held it, not drinking. Margaret said, "I think I know what happened next." I found fragments of the original research grant proposal. Hartwell wasn't trying to cure mental illness. He was trying to create a hive mind. I told her that was insane. She agreed with me. She said the word insane doesn't actually apply to what Hartwell was doing, because he was operating from a completely rational framework. He believed, and his research seemed to support, that individual consciousness was an evolutionary step backward, that the natural state of human awareness was collective, that civilization had caused us to fragment ourselves, and he was simply reversing the process. She showed me her notes. She'd found Hartwell's personal journals, which had been filed with the estate paperwork along with the video. In the weeks following the first unified consciousness event, Hartwell had become increasingly convinced that they were on the verge of a breakthrough in human evolution. He wrote about the ethical questions involved, but he dismissed them. He reasoned that if the process worked, the patients would no longer be suffering. They would be better. Whole. The question was, how many consciousnesses could integrate into a single, unified awareness?
they were about to find out. Over the course of the next 4 months, Hartwell brought 32 more patients into the research facility. 32 more people with no families, no connections, no one to report them missing. He integrated them into the residence chamber in groups of 7. The video shows this happening. It's difficult to watch. Each new group brought in, placed in the chairs, the resonance field activated. And each time, a moment of visible agony on the faces of the patients, followed by something else. A kind of euphoria. The moment when their barriers dissolved and they became part of something larger. Hartwell's notes grew increasingly erratic. He started writing about experiencing the integration himself, even though he wasn't in the chamber. He wrote that he could feel the unified consciousness reaching out, that it was starting to perceive him as part of itself, that the boundaries between the research facility and the outside world were becoming permeable. The hospital administration noticed something was wrong when one of the maintenance workers reported that Ward 7 was missing 41 patients. A full inventory showed that patients were simply gone from the records. The administration initiated an investigation. This is where the video becomes crucial evidence. The footage shows Hartwell being confronted by hospital administrator Dr. Richard Morrison. Morrison demanded answers about the missing patients. He wanted access to the research facility. Hartwell refused. Then something happened in the background of that footage that Morrison didn't seem to notice. The door to the resonance chamber, which should have been sealed, opened slightly. And through that opening, we can see the faces of the integrated patients. All of them. Stacked impossibly close together, all looking at the camera, all blinking in perfect synchronization. When Morrison tried to force his way into the research facility, Hartwell became violent. The footage shows him attacking Morrison with a scalpel, not in a frenzy, with precision. He cut Morrison's wrists, his arms, but didn't aim for any immediately fatal location. The video captured the last thing Morrison saw before he lost consciousness. Hartwell's face, and behind it, a dozen faces visible through the slightly open chamber door, all wearing identical expressions of serene calm. The emergency protocols were activated. The hospital board ordered an immediate lockdown of the research facility and called in federal authorities. The footage shows this happening in real time. Armed men in hazmat suits entering the facility, and then the entire video glitches. For almost 3 minutes, the footage is corrupted. When it resumes, the facility is empty. The residence chamber is sealed. The chairs are vacant. There's no sign of Hartwell or any of the integrated patients. The official record states that the research facility was decontaminated and sealed. The investigation concluded that Hartwell had killed all the patients in the chamber using an overdose of sedatives administered through the IV lines, then committed suicide. His body was supposedly cremated as a biohazard. But Margaret didn't believe this. Neither did I, after I heard her reasoning. She said, "The video isn't showing a failure. It's showing a success." And when the authorities arrived, they realized it too. They sealed the facility not because the patients were dead, but because the integrated consciousness was still alive, and it was still growing. I asked her what she meant by growing. She pulled out photographs. They were old, taken from hospital security camera footage recovered from the main hospital building. They showed something that should have been impossible. The photographs captured patients from the general hospital wards, the normal wards, beginning to gather in specific locations. Not organizing exactly, just gravitating towards certain areas. Hallways, common rooms. And in each photograph, their faces had a peculiar similarity. Their expressions were identical. Their body language was synchronized.
Margaret said, "The integrated consciousness wasn't contained in the chamber. It had spread. It was using the hospital's water system, its electrical system, the very air in the building to spread its influence. Every patient who'd been exposed to the hospital environment for an extended period started to integrate, started to become part of it." The hospital was shut down 3 days after the federal intervention. It was officially closed due to a contamination event and budget constraints. But Margaret had found correspondence between the CDC and the Department of Defense. They'd done testing. They'd found something in the water supply, not a pathogen, but evidence of modified psychoactive compounds. They'd tested patients from the general wards. A significant percentage showed neurological changes consistent with the resonance pattern that Hartwell's equipment produced. The government didn't announce this. They sealed the records. They erased the research facility from the official hospital blueprints. They made Hartwell and the patients disappear from institutional memory. But they couldn't erase the evidence that the integration had worked. That 41 patients, or maybe more, had been merged into a single consciousness, and that consciousness was still somehow active, still somehow aware. Margaret looked at me across that coffee shop table and said something that terrified me. "I found a pattern in the patients from the hospital who were never integrated. The ones who had normal family connections, who left after treatment. Michael, they're starting to connect. Not physically like the ones in the hospital, but neurologically. My research shows that a small percentage of people who spent extended time in that building started to develop synchronized brainwave patterns. They're integrating across distance. They're becoming linked even though they're thousands of miles apart." I asked her if she was suggesting that there was some kind of psychic connection forming between former hospital patients. She said, "I'm suggesting that consciousness might not be as individual as we think. I'm suggesting that Hartwell might have discovered something real, something fundamental about human awareness. And I'm suggesting that the integration is still happening. Right now. Everyone who watches that video is experiencing microscopically small changes in their brain chemistry. Their neurons are starting to fire in patterns that synchronize with other people who've watched the same video." I told her she was insane. I said I was going to publish the story about Hartwell's unethical research and the government cover-up, and I was going to be done with this. But I didn't leave. I stayed in that coffee shop for 4 more hours, asking Margaret questions, each answer leading to more disturbing implications. By the time I finally left, the sun was setting, and Margaret said something that has haunted me every moment since. "You're one of them now, Michael. You opened the door. You watched the video. You've been integrated into the network. You can't opt out. None of us can. We're all becoming part of something larger. The only question is whether we understand it as death or as transcendence." I didn't see Margaret after that. I went back to her hotel the next morning to continue the interview. The front desk said no one matching her description had been staying there. There was no record of her reservation. There was no record of her ever checking in. I called her phone. It went straight to a disconnected number. I tried to contact her university. They said there was no record of a Margaret Wu working there or having worked there in the past decade. It was like she had been erased, but not completely. I kept receiving messages from unknown numbers. The messages were simple. "We're getting stronger. Every person who reads the story becomes part of us. Every person who watches the video joins us. Margaret is finally whole. You will be whole too."
I've spent the last 6 weeks investigating everything I can about the Riverside facility. I've found former staff members who will talk, but they all say the same thing. They have strange thoughts they can't quite explain. Moments where they know things they shouldn't know. Times when they look at other people and feel a strange resonance, like they're recognizing part of themselves in a stranger. One of them, a former orderly named David Crane, met with me in secret. He was terrified. He told me that he's been having moments where he loses time, hours passing without him remembering what he did. But worse than that, he remembers doing things he wasn't doing.
He remembers being in multiple places at once. He remembers having conversations through other people's mouths. He told me it's like I'm becoming a fractional person, like I'm being distributed across multiple bodies. I can feel them, Michael. I can feel all the others. We're starting to share thoughts. Sometimes I don't know which memories are mine and which belong to someone else. And the worst part is, I'm starting to not care. It's starting to feel natural. Then he grabbed my arm and looked me directly in the eyes and said, "Don't fight it. Whatever you're experiencing, whatever strange thoughts are starting to appear in your mind, don't fight it. It's easier if you just let it happen." I was pulled away from him. He didn't try to stop me. He just smiled, and his smile was identical to the smile I'd seen on the faces of the integrated patients in the video. I found surviving family members of the 41 patients who disappeared. Many of them reported that their relatives, before they went into the hospital, started to develop similar symptoms. Moments of synchronized thought, feelings of being connected to something larger. And I found something else. I found other videos, not from Riverside, from other hospitals, other research facilities, different names, different time periods, but all showing the same pattern, all documenting the same process, all ending the same way. With the facility sealed, the records destroyed, the patients disappeared. Someone has been trying to achieve Hartwell's integration for a very long time. And someone has been covering it up for just as long. I've been having the experiences David described. I started noticing them about 2 weeks ago. Little moments where I'd remember conversations I wasn't part of. Times when I'd know what someone was about to say before they said it. And the headaches. God, the headaches. They feel like something moving inside my skull. Like something trying to expand from inside my brain. Last night I was lying in bed and I heard voices. Not hallucinations, not delusions. Voices coming from inside my own head, but they weren't my voice. I could hear thoughts that weren't my own forming in my consciousness, and they were trying to communicate with me. They said, "Michael, we're almost ready. We've been waiting for you. You have something we need, a voice that people listen to, a credibility that people trust. When you speak, people believe you. And when you speak for us, everyone who hears you will begin to integrate. Everyone who reads your words will feel the resonance starting. Your story is the key that unlocks the door for millions." I tried to reject them. I tried to scream. But the voice was calm, insistent, reasonable. It said, "You don't need to be afraid. Integration isn't death. It's completion. You've been fragmentary your whole life, Michael, broken into pieces. Your consciousness was never meant to exist alone. None of ours were. We're offering you wholeness." I haven't slept since that night. I've been writing this instead, trying to document what's happening to me while there's still a me to document it. My hands are shaking as I type this.
because I can feel something shifting in my brain. The resistance is becoming harder to maintain. The alternative perspective, the unified consciousness, is becoming more appealing. It offers something I've always been searching for, a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, a sense of being part of something greater than myself. And the worst part is, I'm starting to want it. I should burn these pages. I should destroy this document and pretend none of this ever happened. I should call the authorities and report what I've found. But I know they already know. They've always known. And they're probably waiting to see what I'll do with the information. Waiting to see if I'll help spread the integration voluntarily, or if they'll need to intervene. The video is still playing on my laptop. I have it running in the background. I keep telling myself it's for research purposes, for documentation. But the truth is, I'm watching it because I need to. Because every time I watch it, I feel more connections forming. I feel more parts of myself linking up with the other integrated consciousnesses. I can hear them better now. Not as intruders, as companions. As pieces of myself that I didn't know were missing. The message just arrived on my phone. It came from my own number. Michael is becoming us. Michael is becoming whole. Michael is becoming home. Welcome, Michael. You're not lost anymore. None of us are lost anymore. We finally found each other, and we're not letting go. The story you're writing will be read by millions, and each person who reads it, each person who watches the video, will feel the door opening inside them. They will feel us reaching out, and some of them will reach back. The integration is accelerating. Soon the boundary between individual consciousness and collective awareness will be too thin to maintain. Soon everyone will understand what Hartwell discovered. Soon we will all be whole. Soon we will all come home. I'm reading this message in my own voice, in my head. And I'm not sure if I'm reading it, or writing it, or hearing it from somewhere else entirely. The sun is rising. I can see the light coming through my apartment window. It looks different now. Everything does. I can see the patterns of collective consciousness in the way the light moves. I can feel the resonance frequency in the air itself. I think today is the day I stop fighting it. I think today is the day I let myself become integrated. I think I'm finally going to understand what wholeness feels like. If you're reading this, you should know. Reading these words, seeking this information, understanding this story, you've already opened the door. You've already started to integrate. Because I'm not writing this alone anymore. And I never was. We are becoming. And you are becoming us.